You said the smart thing in the meeting, and 10 minutes later someone else said it and got the nod. Nobody teaches you the rules of that room. In 1647, a Spanish Jesuit priest named Baltasar Gracian wrote 300 of them down in a pocketbook called The Art of Worldly Wisdom. And here is the part that should stop you. It is not a book about being good. It is a book about being hard to read. Gracian's central claim contradicts almost everything you have been told about being authentic. Among other people, the most dangerous thing you can do is be completely transparent about what you want, what you feel, and how much you know. Be honest in the group chat on Tuesday, and by Thursday, your honesty has been screenshotted into a conversation you were never part of. Gracian saw that 4 centuries before the screenshot existed. And notice who is saying it: a priest. A man who taught morality for a living and whose own order eventually stripped him of his teaching chair, exiled him to a mountain village, and took away his pen, his ink, and his paper to make him stop writing. That tension is what makes this the strangest self-help book ever published. It is not a manual for manipulating people. It is a manual for surviving them. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to lift 4 laws out of those 300 fragments: reserve, timing, credit, and being needed. And I want you to hold one test against every single one of them. Is this a weapon, or is it armor? Gracian's answer every time is armor. The book is the Oraculo Manual, printed in Spain in 1647, and its author is one of the strangest men ever to write a bestseller. Baltasar Gracian was born in 1601 in Aragon, joined the Jesuits at 18, taught scripture and philosophy, and rose to be rector of the Jesuit college at Tarragona. By day, he was a professional moralist. By night, he was writing books so worldly, so cool-eyed about ambition and reputation that he did not dare put his own name on them. Almost all of them appeared under the name of a brother who, as far as anyone can tell, never existed. Now understand the world he was writing for. 17th century Spain was an empire visibly rotting. Wars it could not pay for, silver fleets that arrived and vanished, plague, hunger, and a court where a man's entire life depended on being noticed by the right patron and never once irritating him. There was no career ladder, there was no contract you could appeal to. There was only the room, the patron, and your reputation, which one repeated sentence could destroy. Spanish even had a word for the mood of that century: desengano, the stripping away of illusions. And Gracian is its coldest voice. His superiors hated what he was doing. They ordered him to stop publishing. He kept going. In 1658, they broke him in public, stripped of his chair, exiled to a small mountain town called Graus, put on bread and water, and deprived of pen, ink, and paper. He died within the year, and the book they punished him for outlived every man who punished him. Schopenhauer translated it into German and carried it about with him. Nietzsche thought nothing in Europe finer for moral subtlety, and the small English version we are quoting tonight, made by Joseph Jacobs in 1892, has never really gone out of print. Here is the whole book in one sentence. The Art of Worldly Wisdom says that other people are the terrain you have to cross, that the terrain is not neutral, and that you survive it not by being louder or cleverer than everyone else, but by being harder to read, harder to use, and harder to do without. Notice what that is not. It is not Machiavelli. The Prince is about states, armies, and the seizing of power, and Gracian never commands a soldier. It is not Sun Tzu either. The art of war is thinking about ground and supply, and one general deceiving another. Gracian's battlefield is a room, an office, a dinner, a group chat. He is the missing middle between those two famous books, The Strategy of Ordinary Life, where nobody dies but reputations do, and where an entire year of work can turn on one sentence you should not have said. That is exactly why he reads as though he were written last week. So we are going to do something the book itself refuses to do. Give it a spine. 300 maxims is not wisdom, it is noise, and a list is the fastest way to forget all of it. Instead, out of about a dozen of those maxims, 4 laws. Law 1, reserve. Law 2, timing. Law 3, let the other person have the credit. Law 4, be needed rather than liked. And then a 5th beat that matters more than the other 4 combined, because without it, this book really is poison. The line between self-defense and manipulation, and exactly where Gracian himself draws it. Law 1, reserve. Gracian's 3rd maxim is titled, Keep matters for a time in suspense, and buried in it is the sentence the whole book grows out of. Cautious silence is the holy of holies of worldly wisdom. Sit with how strong that is. Not useful, not prudent, holy. He is not telling you to lie. He says almost nothing about lying and thinks liars are amateurs. He is telling you that your thoughts, your plans, and your appetites are property, and that most people give theirs away for free. It is both useless and insipid, he writes, to play with the cards on the table. A resolution declared is never highly thought of. It only leaves room for criticism. Maxim 98 puts it even more bluntly. Write your intentions in cipher, because the passions are the gates of the soul, and he tells you to adopt the policy of the cuttlefish and disappear into your own ink. And in Maxim 43, the rule that costs most people a career, think with the few and speak with the many. Now the modern mirror, and it is uncomfortably exact. You tell 3 colleagues you are quietly looking for another job. You put your genuine, unedited opinion of the reorganization into a chat with 40 people in it. You announce the plan while it is still fragile, because saying it out loud feels like progress. In every one of those moments, you handed someone a card, for nothing, and Gracian's coldest observation is that reputation depends more on what is hidden than on what is done. The line to carry: silence is not dishonesty. It is the last privacy you actually own. Law 2. Timing. Maxim 55 has a one-word title in English. Wait. And it contains one of the strangest images in the book. You must pass through the circumference of time before arriving at the center of opportunity. Read it as a diagram. The thing you want sits at the center. You cannot walk straight at it. You have to go round, and going round takes time, and the going round is not wasted, it is the route. Gracian says, a wise reserve seasons the aims and matures the means, and then, magnificently, that time's crutch affects more than the iron club of Hercules. He quotes a king who said, "Time and I against any two." Here is what that costs you tomorrow morning. The email you wrote at 11 at night, the one that was completely correct, is the same email at 9 the next morning, except that at 9 you can choose. Asking for the raise the week after a bad quarter is not brave, it is badly aimed. Resigning in the heat of one bad conversation gets you a story you will tell for years and a reference you will regret. Gracian adds a companion rule in Maxim 66. See that things end well, because the world does not notice the details of the measures employed, only the good or ill result. Nobody remembers that you were right in March. They remember how it finished. The line to carry: most of what looks like other people's luck is other people's patience. Law 3. Let the other person have the credit. This is the maxim people quote when they want to prove Gracian is a cynic, and it is the one that will save you the most damage. All victories breed hate, and that over your superior is foolish or fatal. Read that again. Not some victories, all of them. Every single time you win in front of another person, you make a small enemy, and if the person you have just beaten happens to sit above you on the ladder, you have not scored a point. You have started a countdown. Gracian is not telling you to be stupid or to hide your work. He is telling you where to be brilliant. In the result, not in the moment when someone else is watching themselves lose. His actual advice is a piece of surgical psychology. Superiors, he says, will allow a man to help them but not to surpass them, and will have any advice tendered them appear like a recollection of something they have forgotten rather than as a guide to something they cannot find. That is the whole art. Hand the idea over in a form the other person can pick up as their own. And the modern mirror is brutal because our tools are built for the opposite. The public correction in the channel, the reply all that begins with the words, "Well, actually," the screenshot with the receipts. Every one of them wins the exchange and loses the person. Elsewhere, Gracian puts the same thought as a promise. Show yourself less, and you will be rewarded by being esteemed more. The line to carry: be right in private and useful in public, and let the credit find its own way home. Law 4. Be needed rather than liked. Maxim 5 is called create a feeling of dependence, and its central sentence is one of the coldest things ever written about human beings. The wise man would rather see men needing him than thanking him. His reasoning is unsentimental and, if you are honest, observably true. Hope has a good memory, gratitude a bad one. He that has satisfied his thirst turns his back on the well, and the orange once sucked falls from the golden platter into the wastebasket. Everyone has met the well. It is the colleague who covered for everybody, said yes to everything, was universally liked, and was on the list anyway when the list came round. Being liked is a feeling other people have when it is convenient for them. Being needed is a fact about how the work moves. So the practical form of this law is not politics at all. It is craft. Own something that would visibly hurt to lose. Be the person who understands the system nobody documented, who can talk to the customer nobody else can talk to, whose absence is felt in the first week. And Gracian, who thinks of everything, immediately guards the flank. In Maxim 85, he warns against becoming what he calls a man-eel, the card everyone plays. It is a great misfortune to be of use to nobody, scarcely less to be of use to everybody. Available to all is worth nothing to anyone. The line to carry: do not make yourself popular, make yourself hard to replace, and then be generous from that position rather than begging from underneath it. Fifth beat, and the one the other four depend on: is this a weapon or is it armor? Because everything we have said so far can be turned. Reserve becomes deceit. Timing becomes ambush. Letting others take the credit becomes flattering a fool to get near his money. Gracian knows exactly what he is holding. Look at how he opens Maxim 13. Man's life is a warfare against the malice of men. That is his premise, and everything else follows from it. This is a book written by a man who has already been hurt, for readers he assumes will be. It is defensive from the first line to the last. Read the whole 300 and you find something the cynics never mention. He keeps pulling you back. Do not let another's failing grow incurable for the sake of your own advantage. Do not carry silence to excess. One is not obliged to belong so much to all as not to belong at all to oneself. And in Maxim 84, he says the most generous thing in the book. A wise man gets more use from his enemies than a fool from his friends. Flattery is more dangerous than hatred because it covers the stains which the other causes to be wiped out. Your critic is doing unpaid work on your behalf. So here is the test, and it is a clean one. Ask whether the move protects you from being harmed or harms someone who has not moved against you. Reserve about your own plans is armour. Concealing a fact a colleague needs to do their job is a weapon. The line to carry, prudence that only ever costs other people, is not prudence. It is just appetite with better manners. So what does all of it come to? Not 300 tricks. One idea, and here it is. You are visible, all the time, to people whose interests are not identical to yours, and almost all avoidable damage in an ordinary life comes from being read too easily. That is it. Everything else in Gracian is that one insight, turned over and over like a stone. Reserve is refusing to be read. Timing is refusing to be read in the moment you are least yourself. Letting others have the credit is refusing to be read as a threat. Being needed rather than liked is refusing to be read as expendable. 4 laws, 1 instinct. Control the surface and let the substance do the rest. Reputation depends more on what is hidden than on what is done. And now notice the shape of the whole shelf. Sun Tzu gives you armies. Machiavelli gives you the state. Between them lies the terrain almost every one of us actually lives on. The room, the group chat, the reputation that can be lost in one sentence. And Gracian is the only major writer who took it seriously as terrain. He is not sunny about it. He will not tell you that people are basically good, or that authenticity always pays, or that the best work speaks for itself, because he watched the best work get claimed by somebody with a better patron. What he offers instead is the thing his century called désengano, disillusion, and meant as a compliment. Seeing the situation exactly as it is, with the flattering fog cleared off it, and moving accordingly. He wrote it from inside a religious order, under a false name, and they took his pen away for it. He was right about the room. He was right about the room, even about them. Here is the one thing to do with this book tomorrow, and it is small enough that you will actually do it. Pick one sentence you are going to say, and do not say it. That is the whole exercise. Most likely you already know which sentence it is. The correction in the channel that would be satisfying and slightly public. The complaint about a decision that has already been made. The plan you are going to announce before it is real. The thing you are going to tell one person you are pretty sure will tell another. Hold it for 24 hours. Then notice 2 things. First, notice how little you lost. Almost nothing you swallow for a day turns out to have been urgent. Second, and this is the part that changes people, notice how much you gain in the room the next day, because you are now the only person present who still has a card in their hand. That is what cautious silence is the holy of holies of worldly wisdom actually feels like from the inside. It is not coldness and it is not scheming. It is the discovery that you have a choice about how much of yourself to hand over, and that until now you have been handing it over by reflex, for free, to people who did not particularly want it and will not particularly keep it safe. A Jesuit priest wrote the most unsentimental self-help book ever published. Published it under a name that was not his and had his pen and ink taken away for it. And 4 centuries later, it still reads like field notes from your own workplace. Reserve, timing, credit, being needed. Armor, not a weapon. If this walk through the art of worldly wisdom gave you something you can use on Monday, subscribe. A new classic every week, faithfully, in about 20 minutes. Next time we swing to the exact opposite temperament. Voltaire's Candide, a short, savage, extremely funny book about a young man told that this is the best of all possible worlds, who then has the world do its worst to him, and who ends with the most quietly radical piece of advice in European literature. Gracian tells you how to survive the room. Voltaire asks whether you should be in it at all. And tell me in the comments, where is the line for you between reserve and dishonesty? What is the last thing you decided not to say? And were you protecting yourself or hiding? I read every reply.